The young woman you're about to meet knows this all too well. She had everything in front of her. She was about to get married and start a new chapter in her life, and then everything changed in an instant. Well, if you think the story you're about to hear couldn't happen to you, think again, because the reality is it could. And that is why it's today's big conversation.
My name's Rachelle Friedman, and I'm 28 years old. When Chris decided to propose, he totally caught me off guard. Probably 2 weeks after he proposed, I was trying on wedding dresses and picked my wedding dress out because I was so excited. We had our wedding date and everything all planned out. Everything was going really well. It was May of 2010, about 4 weeks before the wedding. My friends had planned this awesome bachelorette party for me. We decided to doll it up and put our dresses on and go out on the town. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, we got back to my friend's house and we decided, hey, let's go for a swim. And I remember standing by the side of the pool, thinking about going in, and in a playful gesture, my friend came up behind me and pushed me in lightly, and I went head first. When I hit the bottom of the pool, I went into total shock. I lost movement in my body immediately. My friends got into the pool to help me. They pulled me out of the water. I remember seeing my legs still in the water, and I couldn't feel them. I couldn't feel the wetness or the coldness. And that was the moment that I could actually visualize, I'm not feeling my body. And that's when I got really scared.
And here to tell us the rest of her story, please welcome Rachelle Friedman Chapman. Hi there, how are you? Nice to see you. So, Rachelle, thank you so much for coming by. And
Thank
of course,
you.
the story obviously was just half told in what we just saw. What was the extent of your injuries? Clearly, obviously, we see they were serious.
Yes, I'm considered a C6 quadriplegic, and there's actually a misconception, you know, that people think a quadriplegic is always paralyzed from the neck down, and that's actually not the case. It's just someone who has impairment in all 4 of their limbs. So for me, it's my dexterity. I have no finger function. I have very little tricep function, but I do have pretty strong biceps and wrists, but below the chest, I feel nothing and can't move.
And I know that, as we just heard, you couldn't feel your legs after you were in the pool, but you managed to float to the surface.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened after that, because obviously you were panicked.
Yeah. It's very foggy, but at the same time, I remember going in, I never lost consciousness, and I remember just coming up and my head popping out of the water, and I looked at my friend, and I said, this isn't a joke, you need to call 911 right now.
And you were also sort of panicked and asking to be taken out of the pool, weren't you?
Yes, coincidentally, I was a lifeguard part-time at the time, and so were 2 of my friends, and if someone has a neck, back, or any injury like that in the water, you should never, ever take them out of the water. You should stabilize them in the water, but we just panicked. I mean, when you get hurt in the water, I was scared, obviously, and I said, get me out of here. Looking back, it was a bad idea.
You were taken to the hospital, and tell me when you realized how serious the situation was.
Well, before I even went to the hospital, like lying on the side of the pool, I kind of knew. And, you know, there was deep down.
How did you know that?
I mean, you feel it in your body. Just looking down at my legs, and they weren't moving, and I couldn't feel them. It just felt gone. I mean, I just had this feeling it wasn't going to come back. And when I went to the hospital, they did a kind of a touch test and asked me what I could feel, what I could move. And then the doctor looked at me and said, this is permanent. You're never going to walk again. And it just kind of confirmed what I was already feeling.
Then you had to obviously reach out and tell your fiance, Chris,
Yes.
who that weekend was also, just as you were with your girlfriends, you know, sort of celebrating your upcoming wedding.
Right.
He was with his friends doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, well, he was fishing. He was with his dad, actually, on a fishing trip. And I didn't even bother to ask him exactly where he was. I just knew he was in North Carolina somewhere fishing. And so when this happened, they asked me, where is Chris? And I said, I don't know. You know, I don't know how to even get in touch with him. But it took a park rangers and sheriffs and a bunch of people and all my family to find him, and they had to break the news to him.
And so your family told him?
They did.
And you must have been terrified.
Yeah.
About his reaction.
Not, I was only scared to tell him because I was putting myself in his situation, and I can't imagine, I cannot imagine getting a call like that. If someone called me and told me Chris was hurt, it would be impossible to bear. So I was just scared about how he was going to feel.
Well, Chris is here and he can tell us. Chris, when you got that call from the hospital from Rachel's family, it must have been devastating.
It certainly was. There was so much confusion at the time, and because we were so far away, we were really detached from the situation and couldn't get a clear picture of exactly what had happened and kind of what the result would be.
You must have had to go through a whole process, really both of you, I imagine, because here you are a month away from probably the most important decision of your life. And Rachel is in this situation. How did it affect both of you in terms of thinking about your future plans together as a couple?
Well, it was very devastating. We had a lot of things planned out. Things were going really well for us. We had just gotten a house, our established jobs, so we were becoming pretty stable. Looking forward to our weddings. We had a lot of things moving in the right direction. We were very fortunate, and all of a sudden we kind of had to take a step back and look at the big picture and kind of restructure what the future was going to look like for us.
And so, were there a lot of conversations? I imagine, Rachel, putting myself in your position of you saying, is this what you signed up for? Are you okay with this? How are we gonna, do this together as a couple?
Well, we get that question a lot, and it really never crossed my mind that he might leave, and because I put myself in his situation, and had this happen to him, all I would want was, I would just be happy he was alive. And I think this accident, I wish it never happened. Obviously, I would go back and change it if I could. But it did bring us closer together because we realized how quickly things can change. It sounds really mushy, but we never leave the house without saying I love you, because we know that, you never know what could happen.
And I know Dr. Richard Besser is here. He's ABC's chief medical correspondent. And Dr. Besser, you hear a story like this. You see Rachel. How rare is this? You do hear about these accidents happening at shallow lakes or in the shallow end of a pool. Somebody just happens to fall in the wrong way, hit the wrong thing, and boom, things change.
Yeah, it's actually more common than many people think, as many as 1,000 times a year. So that's 2 to 3 times per day. There is a diving accident or spinal cord accident related to a swimming pool.
What has been the biggest challenge for you, Rachel, in terms of adjusting to your new normal?
That's a big question. Overall, the hardest thing is obviously losing your independence, and that's very hard to deal with because, I went to college, I got a job, and I was a very independent woman, and there are a lot of things that I rely on Chris and my family for. And it's frustrating at times. I'm a happy person, I'd like to think, but there are days where it is hard.
I know that you and Chris had to postpone your wedding, but you were married.
Yes.
A year after your accident, July of 2011. What was that day like for both of you?
It was awesome. It was hot. It was 102
I love your
degrees.
Bouquet, by the way. I love the sunflowers.
Yeah, so I was happy, but he was hot in that 3-piece suit. But I liked it. I like it 100 degrees, but it was the best day ever. I got to plan this awesome wedding again. I got to do it all over again, basically, and had a beautiful country-themed sunflower wedding out in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, and it was beautiful. I loved it.
Well, you both, I think, have the most inspiring, extraordinary attitude about dealing with something like this that could, is a major setback, but obviously you're not letting it hold either of you back in terms of building a life together. In fact, you have something to tell us along those lines?
So, at the time when we got married, I was thinking, this is going to complete my happiness. This is like the final piece to our little puzzle. But now, a couple years later, I really feel like I want a family and I want to be a mom. And so biologically, I'm able to still have a child. Paralysis doesn't keep that from happening, but I think it's just best for my body and best for us to look into surrogacy. So we're definitely looking into having a surrogate and raising money for that.
Which is so exciting. And I know you've written a book as well. And tell me about the book and why you wanted to write it.
Well, I mean, I never thought I'd be an author. I mean, it's so crazy to have a book out. I really hated English class. Sorry, Mrs. Goulart. But I did, but now that I realize that, I mean, I actually enjoy writing, and it's been really cool to tell my story, and it's really about kind of the details I didn't really get into in these short interviews that I have, because there is so much to my story. I talk about where I met these girls and why we're so close, how Chris and I met and why we're so close, and our story and my story with my friends, and how I've dealt with this accident, and really how everything's ended up. And it's a pretty cool, in-depth story that's been really fun to tell. So I've become a writer. Who knew?
Wow, who knew? Who knew where life can take you, right? Well, thanks so much for coming and telling us your story, and Chris and Rachel. I wish you so much happiness in the future, and let us know what happens in the baby department.
I
We'd love to
will.
hear.